Welcome to the Birth Protectors Podcast. I'm Rahelios.
And I'm Celeste, and we are bringing in a father's perspective on home birth.
Today we're going to talk about all the hemorrhaging. Apparently it's a subject that that a lot of people really worry about. I guess it makes sense that it would be something to worry about because if you're going to die in childbirth, that's probably the most likely way that it's going to happen is from hemorrhaging. And it seems like people have an idea that this is something that's really common and really likely when you're having a baby, even to the point where the common knowledge kind of considers it normal. Like when you have a baby, you hemorrhage, like that's just something that happens. And if you don't know how to handle it, then you could die. And that's why you need to be in a hospital, because they have to handle the hemorrhaging that's almost inevitably going to occur. Well, that's not the way it is at all.
Yeah, we've had 10 undisturbed births, and I didn't hemorrhage once. So that's not something that just happens, but it is something that people are very concerned about. It is one of the main fears that comes up when people are considering home birth. That, it's like, what if you hemorrhage?
If you're gonna hemorrhage, it's like we say so many times, if you're gonna hemorrhage, it's probably gonna be because you're in the hospital and because of the chain of interventions that they always do. Hemorrhaging is one of the main side effects, or just effects. I wouldn't even call it a side effect.
Yes, so many things that they do increase the chance of hemorrhage. And they don't...
Because it's not natural. You wouldn't naturally just hemorrhage when you have a baby. That's not part of the thing.
Yeah, unless something goes wrong. Or in cases of like real malnourished, if you're really low anemic, that can increase your chance of hemorrhage.
But if that's the case, your chances of bleeding are just higher in general. So if you're like a sick person and you have issues in your body that would cause you to be likely to, your blood doesn't clot or something like that because of whatever, there's, several health conditions where that occurs, which are all pretty rare. But if you have one of these rare conditions, then yeah, maybe you having a birth at home unassisted without any medical people nearby might not be a good idea for you.
Yeah. And in those cases, the drugs might be needed. But the truth is that postpartum hemorrhage is really quite rare in a birth that hasn't been disturbed. And
by disturbed, I don't know why you use this term disturbed.
Interventions, without the interventions.
Yeah, okay, like everything that happens in a hospital. Like, I think it disturbed, like, what, someone comes and knocks on the door, you guys in there? Like, no, it's much worse than that.
Yeah, but, sometimes even little disturbances in the environment can have really bad consequences. Like, just being in a hospital, in an environment where there's high stress and everybody is, like, expecting everything to go wrong. That fear can create your body not clamping down and stopping the bleeding like it's supposed to. Like it things that even interrupt the hormonal process that's supposed to happen after birth can increase the chance of hemorrhaging.
Well, I think also, like something you just said, okay, your body has to clamp down to stop the bleeding. That's kind of a misperception also. because it's not like having a baby just automatically leads to bleeding, and that your body has to clamp down, otherwise you're going to bleed out and bleed to death. That's not the way this works. Like, bleeding is a facet of injury. Now there is usually blood involved, but it's an amount it's not because you're bleeding, your body has to go into emergency mode to block it off. It's just some amounts that are left over. Like, okay, if you don't yank on the placenta, if you don't force the birth to happen prematurely, if you don't use pitocin, and you're not pushing and straining, and you don't cause any injury, if you just allow birth to progress on its own, you're most likely not going to tear, so there's no blood there, except maybe slight amounts. The placenta doesn't rip away from the uterine wall. It's a natural process of separation that your body undergoes slowly. It's not instantly. It's not like the baby's born, boop, now the placenta pops out, boop. It's like, just think about that. Of course that doesn't make sense, because your body has to take its time and cause that separation, and seals off the blood vessels, and all of these things occur magically. And it's not magic. It's amazing though how it's all just timed perfectly so that you don't bleed out. And the only reason you're going to have like this blood gushing is because something went wrong, usually something that you caused by either being in the doctor and having the doctors cause it, or you were straining too hard, or you were freaked out and straining too hard, straining, anything having to do with straining. Because then imagine any cut you have on your body, okay? And a cut is an unnatural thing. And this is childbirth. We're talking about something natural. It's supposed to occur. Your body's designed to go through this process. But let's imagine a cut. Okay, that's something nobody usually panics that much, because you get a little cut on your skin. But that skin, your body has to coagulate the blood so that it stops coming out, and then it starts healing, and it slowly has to start mending these, the skin together. And if you just go in there and grab it and keep yanking it apart, what do you think's going to happen? Like, it's not going to heal right?
Not going to heal, and it's going to keep bleeding.
Yeah, so, you got to, like, take care of it and be gentle. Well, it's, same thing. So, but that's like the exact opposite of what happens in a medical birth situation. Like, nothing about it is gentle. It's all about strain and push and force and hurry. And that's why people bleed.
Rush everything. Yeah, it's, when I looked up the statistics and saw that, it's like hemorrhage only happens in approximately like 3% of births, or some places were saying like up to 10%. And I'm thinking,
this is in hospitals, probably.
Yeah, because this almost all birth happens in the hospital. But I'm quite surprised that the rate of hemorrhage is not much higher.
Yeah, like 85%.
But I suppose it actually would be if it weren't for the drug. Because now their active management stage, they do all these things that cause hemorrhaging, but, they're there to save the day.
And then they treat the hemorrhaging really fast.
The immediate after, they give pitocin immediately after the baby emerges. Like, it's standard policy. It's their active management stage protocol, which is the first thing they do is inject you with the pitocin, or in the IV or whatever. And second thing they do is immediately clamp the cord, or new guidelines allow them to.
So they get the pitocin in there, but you've been taking pitocin the whole time usually.
Well, sometimes
on top of it, and they give you even more now.
Yeah, it's part of like the drug, and and then so they immediately clamp and cut the baby's cord, and then they immediately start pulling on the cord, and
trying to rip the placenta off of the uterine wall.
And it's called controlled cord traction. And it seems just so barbaric to me, and I've heard stories that it's very painful.
It's also idiotic,
and it's like, obviously that's gonna cause.
It's also stupid.
It's like a scab, kind of like It's like ripping it off
I would say
before it
it's way
comes off
worse
on
than
its
that.
own.
It's like way worse than that. And yeah, and the idiocy, and that just reminded me of something where before we started the podcast, we were just talking. You told me about the doctor that actually was explaining to a woman why they have to cut the cord quickly.
Why they wouldn't wait longer than 30 seconds is...
See, that was the delayed cord clamping they talk about.
They
30
said,
whole
okay,
seconds.
yes, we'll give you delayed cord clamping, and why they wouldn't go longer than 30 seconds is the doctor told her that if they wait any longer than that, the cord's going to start flowing out of the baby back into the placenta.
Now,
I mean,
okay,
how
if you're
can a medical professional be so...
It's like maybe
clueless?
you don't know that. Yeah, okay, maybe you don't know. If you're not a professional, you don't realize how completely stupid that is. Like that's as idiotic as like saying that I can't even think of something to make an analogy. It's something that does not happen. Like that's not the way it works ever.
Yeah.
Like for a doctor to claim that that doctor is either completely stupid, like okay, he just is ignorant, like did not learn his lessons and somehow still passed medical school and is now delivering babies, or he's purposely lying to women,
or
so
maybe he said that just to make her,
and which makes him
agree to cut the cord,
which makes him evil.
Most likely he was just totally ignorant, and maybe that was his own deduction, like, oh, this is probably why we cut the cord right away.
And look, either way, in my opinion, you're not doing good putting your life in the hands of people that
what business do you have?
If you're ignorant or evil, you should not be taking care.
Sorry.
Look, here's the thing: is these doctors that are making mistakes, like saying things like, "Oh, the blood's gonna flow backwards through the cord back into the out of the baby," which is something that does not happen at all, not even in an accidental way. That would be like some weird anomaly, abnormality, deformity situation or whatever. It's probably not even then. But anyway, so a person that's in that would say something like that is either ignorant or evil. And this is where so many doctors are. And I'm led to this opinion because of hearing these kinds of stories. Of course, I'm obviously not talking about the people that we love in the medical profession who are actually there to help people, but there's so many that are there that are just ignorant because they don't care. They did not do a good job of learning their profession, or they are evil, which means they know exactly what they're doing is wrong or harmful, and they do it anyway. And in either one of those cases, I don't want those people touching my wife. I don't want those people touching my child, and I don't want them touching me or anyone I care about. And why I wouldn't not want to put my health care or any kind of emergency situation in a person's hands who is either ignorant or evil.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you have an emergency, you kind of are. You have to. Just hope that you're getting a good doctor.
So that's really annoying to me and distressing to me that we're in a state where that runs so rampant in the medical profession. I'm sorry, this is my opinion. And as we say in every episode, we are not medical professionals. I am not a medical professional. I have zero authority to give medical opinions. Don't listen to anything I say as medical advice. I'm just some guy, a caring father, giving the caring father's opinion, and that's all it is. And so, in my opinion, from my observation, I just see this ignorance and evil running rampant. Now, there's plenty of medical professionals who, if you're listening to this and you're like, that's not me, I'm a caring person, I'm not talking to you. I love people like you. I'm so grateful that there are people like you that actually care, that learn their profession, learn how to do a good job, are doing the best they can to do what's right, even in spite of sometimes having their hands tied by some protocols that don't make sense.
Yeah, there are good doctors, but even the well-educated ones, like, typically just do what they were told what they learned. And it takes a really long time for medical practices to reflect the current like knowledge and like studies, even like the cord clamping thing. Like there had to be like all this evidence pile up about how bad immediate cord clamping is, that they finally had to concede and say, okay, we'll give you 30 more seconds.
Holy
After like how many years? Like 50, 60 years of immediately clamping every baby's cord in the hospital. Like this practice went on for so long. How many babies were damaged in that time?
Yeah, and the damage is huge.
Yeah.
It's a huge amount of damage. We did a whole podcast on this,
on the cord. Yeah.
So we don't need to go on and on about this, but it's like it's a virtually a third of your baby's blood, which for you would be a whole lot, like a major life-threatening injury that you've probably never experienced before. Like it's way more than when you give blood. Like when you go to give blood, they take this gigantic bag. It's a pint of your blood. And it's like basically as much as they can take before they put you into some kind of medical distress. Because it's a huge amount of blood. Like if you cut yourself and spilled that much blood on the ground, you'd be freaking out.
So they classify blood loss as like a class 1, class 2, class 3. When you give blood or have a baby, that's both in the class 1. Like it's up to a pint. Which
is what, like 10%?
Yeah, which is about 10% of your blood volume. Now consider that compared to the baby being deprived of a third of its blood.
Yeah, that's 3 times what you do when you give blood. And they're yanking that out of the baby right off the bat. And yes, they are taking it out because previous to when they cut that cord, it was just in circulation. That was part of your baby's blood supply.
The placenta is your baby's organ. It's like right there. Their whole blood circulation is just circulating through the placenta so that it's getting the oxygen and nutrients from mom. And
now I can hear people saying, and it's logical. I'm like, because even my brain goes there. It's like, well, if it used to be in the placenta, this whole other exterior organ, maybe it is extra. Like that amount of blood probably wouldn't even fit in the baby because it's never all been in the baby at the same time. Like I could understand how that could seem logical. It makes sense. Except I'm here to tell you that from our little measly 10 babies of experience, yes, it does fit. And it all goes in there.
And that's the way it is designed to work.
It just flows in there all on its own naturally, and it doesn't come back out.
The cord turns completely white, and there's a substance in there, Wharton's jelly, that clamps off those veins. And there's like virtually, no blood left in it.
And it doesn't even bleed when you cut it. Like it does not bleed.
More than the tiniest
a little drop or two, but it's not like some continuous flow coming out. You don't even have to clamp it. You don't even have to tie it. It's a good
precaution to tie it. I think to close it off extra tight to prevent infection, and also, just in the rare chance that your baby could bleed from there. But it's like
you don't have to. It's totally unnecessary, and if you try it, you'll see. and it's because there's no blood coming out of there. So for the doctor to act like, oh no, it's gonna flow back through, is the most absurd, idiotic thing. Yeah, it's just absurd.
So why, why do they do these things? Is it like they do some study, or they have some idea. Usually, they test it out and they get some kind of result based on their study, and then they just continue doing it without question for years and years and years.
Yeah, I could see these studies like we waited up to 2 minutes, and when we cut that cord, blood came gushing out like a fire hose after the delayed cord clamping of 2 minutes. Because it's like, it takes more than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It takes like 10 minutes.
Or longer. I mean, It might, I mean, it all depends on like how long the baby's
Yeah,
cord is.
it takes however long it takes. That's how long.
Like however long your baby needs that blood to continue flowing. There's so many factors that like it can't be just determined by some arbitrary number. Like we should wait by, you should wait until your baby doesn't need it anymore.
Yeah, it's not determined by a specific amount of time ever. It's completely unique to you, to your situation, to that particular birth. Because did your placenta separate right away? Is it still attached? Is it, did it separate early? You don't know.
Okay, so back to like the postpartum hemorrhage, like they determine this based on an amount of blood loss, and it's subjective. Like just like, what we were talking about with the cord, because some women can lose more blood and feel totally fine. And some women lose a little bit of blood and, they don't have very good reserves. They're low on iron or whatever, and they, not do good with a smaller amount of blood loss. So I feel like, it's over-diagnosed to the point that so many women are walking around with this story that they believe they hemorrhaged during birth or, after their birth of their baby. Yeah. And so they're scared.
Because they would have died.
They think they would have died without that.
If I wouldn't have been in the hospital, I would have died.
And they believe that they hemorrhaged, but in many cases, I just think that it's overdiagnosed. A lot of midwives, will say anything over the standard 2 cups or 1 pint is a hemorrhage. So like, and that's like so subjective. So it all comes down to if she just thinks it looks like a lot of blood, and the mother could be feeling fine. And so she, whips out the Pitocin, and so now the mother's all filled with fear and disrupts things further down the line. But there's just so much fear around postpartum hemorrhage. And I think obviously a real hemorrhage would be scary. Like,
well, yeah, because if that's how you can die. If you're going to die, that's how it's going to happen.
If you're bleeding and you can't get the bleeding to stop, yeah, that's scary. But people are so scared of bleeding after birth that there's just so much fear around it, because bleeding after birth is like normal. The placenta separates and there's going to be a little bit of blood loss, before those veins that were connected to that placenta close off like they're supposed to. And the other thing that I don't hear anybody talking about is the fact that when you're pregnant, your blood volume increases up to 50%.
50?
50%. Now, don't you think this could be kind of a protective mechanism that happens during pregnancy to, protect you from, potential blood loss, excessive blood loss?
How can it increase 50%? That's a lot.
It is.
That's like half again your entire blood volume.
I looked it up, like, so that if it says 30 to 50%. So if your blood volume increases 30%, that's
still a lot.
Liter and a half extra blood.
Where does it all go?
And it's crazy because, like, even in a birth where you don't lose a lot of blood, your body will naturally return to its original blood volume within a matter of weeks after birth. Where does it go? And how I don't know. The body is amazing. But the point is that they know this. Everybody knows that your blood volume increases during pregnancy. And to me, it seems obvious that that's a protective mechanism.
So you have extra.
So you have extra blood because it's in preparation for the fact that you're going to lose some blood after birth.
Now, are they saying it increases 50% because now you've got the baby's blood and the placenta and all that?
No, it's your blood volume increases. Because
the mom's blood and the baby's blood do not mix ever.
And this isn't like they calculate it as part of your weight, pregnancy weight. Like this much of your pregnancy weight is due to increase in blood volume. This much is from placenta, amniotic fluid. This much is from the baby. This much is from the placenta. And so it's a significant amount.
Oh, dang.
And what I don't hear people talking about is the fact that,
so you're like fine if you lose that.
Yeah, that blood loss after birth is common, and it's okay to a degree because you're set up, you're designed, you're protected, like you have that extra blood volume. Now, like if you lose too much too fast, you're gonna have negative effects and like wooziness and.
But again, that's probably not gonna happen unless there was some trauma introduced, which.
Yeah, but
again and again and again, say the same thing.
So.
If anyone's gonna, should be worried about hemorrhaging, it's your baby, because as soon as they clamp off that cord blood, that's basically a hemorrhage.
Yeah,
a massive one.
So I see a huge irony. Like, they're not like I don't know what the word is for that, but
hypocrisy.
Yes, it's a very because here if you lose 2 pints of blood during birth, they say emergency. That's 20% of your blood volume. But you have extra reserves. Whereas the baby, they think nothing of depriving of it.
They'll just routinely deprive it of a third of their
20
blood.
to 30% of their blood, depending on how instantly they cut the cord.
And they don't call that an emergency. They call that standard protocol, standard procedure.
Yeah, and think about like the baby's vital signs and how much that is affected by being instantaneously cut off from their blood volume.
Yeah, which leads to the next intervention, and which leads to the next intervention. It's the whole cascade. And by the time they cut the cord, they've already, performed 10 different destructive interventions at that point.
Yeah.
It's completely nutso. Like we probably sound to a regular person who's never thought about any of this stuff and who's just planning to go to the hospital and have their baby and all this talk probably sounds insane. But from my perspective, when I see and realize and experience what goes on in the hospital today, just as standard procedure, I feel we are in the dark ages still. It's like the literal dark ages of medicine, performing
crazy.
Insane stupidity out of nothing but stupidity and ignorance. Like this is like medieval birth going on. Although it was actually way worse back then.
At times.
In Europe. Yeah. Well, yeah, in a lot of places in the world, they've done insane things. But
horrible.
That's a whole other... That could be just a fun podcast someday. It'd have to be like Tales from the Dark Side or something.
Yeah, so, and ironically, in this third stage management that they began doing in the 60s, where it involves these 3 steps: the drug, the oxytocin to clamp down the uterus, immediate cord clamping, and pulling the cord, placenta out by the cord. So this is their active management stage. The reason that they say that they're doing this is to prevent postpartum hemorrhage. And
all right, brilliant.
So, but more recent studies have shown that, well, actually, the only one of those things that actually reduces hemorrhage is the drug. Like, cutting the baby's cord has absolutely nothing to do with whether the mother is going to bleed or not. And I can't believe that they haven't found evidence that, they haven't done studies or whatever on the yanking the placenta out.
Well, yeah. Could this just not be just common sense? like if you're a medical professional, do you not, does your common sense just completely turn off
I mean,
because
I
something's written in a book? It says, go ahead, yank the placenta out, it'll be fine.
their theory is the longer that you leave the placenta in, the more likely the mom's going to hemorrhage.
Oh yeah, and it's gonna
And
clamp down and retain the placenta, and it'll never come out. All this BS.
yeah, well, maybe it would clamp down on the placenta when they're injecting pitocin in there
Well,
unnaturally.
yeah, if
Like,
anything's gonna cause it, it's that. It's like because they're forcing the body to do what it otherwise wouldn't do, and the body knows what to do. Like we're either divinely designed or we've evolved for millions of years or some combination, whatever you want to believe. In any case, there's been a lot going into creating this system to work the way it does, and it works really well if you don't screw with it. Yeah, it really does.
yeah,
So it's it's just, oh, it's crazy. It is crazy what goes on. And so that's why we're here talking about these things, and we get upset and we roll our eyes. But it's upsetting
it's
because
yeah,
it's offensive, because brutality is happening to innocent women and
and
far more innocent babies.
yeah,
And
that's upsetting.
yeah, it's not okay. It is not okay. And if you think it's okay, no, you wouldn't think it's okay to see any child brutalized right in front of your face. Is, like this poor, innocent child, nobody hasn't done anything wrong, and somebody just grabs it and starts whacking it and beating it and slapping it and brutalizing it, causing it to bleed to death. I don't think anyone out there would say, "Oh yeah, it's fine." It happens. Hey, spare the rod, spoil the child. Sometimes you got to chop their arms off, whatever. No, it's
No,
brutality and it's wrong, and that's why I get upset. It's upsetting. I don't like it. I'm not okay with it.
and I don't understand how people can be so desensitized to it. I mean, I guess if you just work in it and just see it every single day, and you're conditioned to just trust the medical professionals, and you think that all these things that they do to your baby is necessary. I don't know. Like, I couldn't imagine like letting anybody handle my baby that way.
And anything can happen. This is where dad step in, step up. In this world, we will be given chances to be a man. And this is one of them. This is probably the most important one. Unless you end up in some unfortunate circumstance where you're going to have to defend your family from some murder or some other physical violence, this is actually it. The birth of your child. That's it right there. That's your chance. And, you could be crazy, like take your family walking through the ghetto of LA and say, "Oh, I'll protect you," but you're an idiot. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, okay, yeah, go have your baby in the hospital. You're going to have the opportunity to try and protect them. It's not going to work because they have the law on their side and they will restrain you. They will evacuate you from the premises. But the way to protect is don't walk through the ghetto. When you're going to have a baby, keep it in your home, in your environment where you're in charge, where you make the rules.
Yeah, and in the rare instance that you have to go to the hospital for emergency, like, that's going to be really unfortunate, and there's going to be trauma.
Yeah, it's emergencies are traumatic, but if it's an actual emergency and you have to go to the hospital, well, then you go, and hopefully that they can mitigate the damage, and you will be thankful for modern medicine, as we all are, if we unfortunately end up having to be, in that type of situation. That's what hospitals are for. That's the beauty of modern medicine. They can deal with trauma.
But birth is not a medical event. It is not an emergency. It is
Yes.
not. It's a natural biological process that just simply happens.
Yes. And
And relatively smoothly.
yes, so that's, yes. That's the contrast to all this stress and everything that we've just been talking about, and we always talk about in these podcasts. But because the flip side of it is when you're home, when you keep your family home, your wife is home, you have your baby at home, and you're in charge, and your wife is in charge, and you it's just a smooth and beautiful, amazing experience that you will remember your whole life, and you'll love, and you'll be empowered by in so many ways. Empowered. And all of these horrible things that we describe here don't happen. That's the whole point. Like, all those things, they're virtually guaranteed that some or all of them will happen when you go to the hospital, and you can be virtually guaranteed that none of them will happen if you just stay home.
Yep, that's, I would say, the most the most important thing you could do to avoid the risk of hemorrhage is to avoid that environment and those interventions. And
yeah, which, okay, and then we're gonna be called idiots and called crazy and called insane and called ignorant and called all these things for saying this type of stuff. But that's where we stand. That's our uneducated opinion based on the experience of our lives.
Well, and yeah, and be proactive. Take care of yourself and be healthy and nourish your body. If you're sick or unhealthy, then you might end up needing the hospital.
Oh yeah, that's a huge other thing.
So
be healthy in the first place. Yes, that's huge. That needs several podcasts.
So yeah, and because
if you're sick, if you're messed up, if your body's already screwed up, well, you're gonna have problems.
If you got low iron and you're weak and you're anemic, then that's a risk factor for
it's a bunch of risk factors.
For hemorrhage.
Because having a baby, it's not easy, right? Like, it would be like an athletic event.
Yeah, it's very physically demanding.
Yeah, so you want to be in good shape.
You want to be in good shape, and you
want to be healthy.
You want to be well fed.
You want to be strong. You want to be flexible. You want to have been well nourished long before getting pregnant. All your ideally,
nutrient stores and
and if you wait till you get pregnant and then decide to get in shape, well, it's better late than never. But that's definitely late. So be healthy in the first place. The healthier you are in the first place, the less likely you are going to have any issues at all, because that's just how our bodies work. If you're in great shape, you can run a mile and it's nothing. But if you've been working in the office for the past 10 years and haven't even walked around the block and all of a sudden go run a mile, you might have a heart attack and die. Same thing.
Yep. So that's important.
Yeah. So, all right. So there's our hemorrhage discussion. So, by the way, go to our website. We'd love to hear from you. So go to our website. It's birthprotectors.com. Birth Protectors with an S. There is, we found there's someone else who has a birth protector website. It's a gal. We don't know her. She provides doula services or something, and she's probably great. But that's not us. So we are Birth Protectors with an S, and go there. Please sign up for our email list, because we can let you know different things we have going on. We have some ideas. We're wanting to create a membership so we can talk more candidly together and really interact with each other. We'd love to have some more personal interaction with you guys. But you can also go there and there's a contact form, and ask us anything, please. Like, give us any feedback. If you want to tell us that you think we're complete idiots, go ahead and do that. Let's have it. Let's hear what you have to say. birthprotectors.com. We'd love to hear from you. Sign up for our email list. Ask us some questions. And we've got some things coming. A membership. Some other things that we have in the works that we want to just put out there to help you out. Birth checklist. That's something we've been thinking about. Items that you might need to have your birth at home. We've got lots of our personal stories. Each one of our stories is really unique, and they've all been totally different, and every one of them had numerous situations that people might in a hospital think were like super dangerous, and they turned out great. And so it's kind of good to hear about those sorts of things. And
lots of
stuff like that. You can follow us on Facebook. Find us on Facebook or on Instagram, Birth Protectors. We're going to start a channel on X as well, because I really like what Elon Musk is doing with his free speech. The complete opposite of Facebook, which is totally censoring anything having to do with unassisted home birth, especially free birth, all these things. Like, Facebook does not like us. Instagram kind of lets it out there for some reason, but they're owned by the same people that own Facebook. Hello. So I don't really like those platforms at all. I'm not really into social media in general, but anyway, so we're probably going to start a channel on X. But if you follow us on email, we can always be in touch with you, even if they shut us down somewhere else, because we say things that we might get shut down for because it's dangerous talk. So, there you go. Hope you enjoyed. I'm Rahelios.
And I'm Celeste. Until next time.
Yeah.